I'd like to start off by introducing Patrick and have him talk a little about Epic Insurance Brokers.
Thank you, Jason. I want to start by saying that I've been on, you're 14 years into this, I'm 8 weeks into my AI journey. So any insights that I can share are probably just crib from Pablo and Jason and shouldn't be taken too seriously. We started this project, we had kind of an odd start in that we have a client who wanted to win with his management and his board, and he asked us if we had any AI. I told him we didn't, but I didn't think we did, but I'd check on it. And from there, we realized we had a massive store of unstructured data that was being underutilized at the firm, and we engaged with Oz, and in kind of remarkably short time, we've got a tool that is deployable and exciting, and with a kind of, I think, a long product development runway. So thank you, Jason. Thank you, Pablo. A little more backup on Epic Insurance Brokers. We're a $1.5 billion brokerage firm. That puts us in the top 15 of U.S. brokers. The area I focus on is with our large clients who mostly self-insure their risks. So instead of just negotiating the premium and the terms of their insurance deals, they may have a 10x or even a 100x concern with their self-insured claims, the smaller claims that they don't pass along to insurers. And this is the nature of the product that we're talking about. If we can have a small impact on making safer workplaces, for example, that has it's a much bigger win for us than getting 50% off their insurance. Workplace injuries in this country are a really big and expensive deal. If we add up all the hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, and wildfires, it just about gets you to the cost of workplace injuries. This is maybe about half automobile injuries costs in this country. So it doesn't have a lot of visibility, but we've got a lot of our clients are extremely concerned, especially the one we're talking about here, which is a heavy industrial client with a lot of turnover in their workforce doing hazardous work. Jason?
All right, thank you, Patrick. All right, so you think of insurance, maybe you don't think it's too exciting or, claims management, but it is actually a really, really fascinating industry with a tremendous amount of data behind it. So AI is really revolutionizing the insurance industry by transforming traditional processes into smarter, more efficient operations that will drive profitability and customer satisfaction. So with AI-powered tools, insurers can streamline their claims processing. They can enhance risk assessment through predictive analytics, and they can personalize the customer interactions with intelligent chatbots, therefore offering faster and more accurate services. AI also enables advanced fraud detection, very important area, reducing losses and improving compliance. So by embracing AI in insurance, it unlocks a whole bunch of new opportunities for growth, innovation, and competitiveness. And with that, let's talk about the solution. So the problem is this particular client is a nationwide company that's tasked with making providing electrical line maintenance and repairs. And unfortunately, people get injured, whether it's climbing poles or sometimes underground work, and sometimes even wildlife injuries. So the solution, well, that's what we developed. It's an AI solution in Azure, and we'll discuss that in a little more detail shortly. Now, the benefits, I'm going to let Patrick spend more time talking about those. But I'll point out that in addition to decreasing operational costs, identifying critical trends, there's a human side of this beyond simply just profit and savings. And I forgot I had an animated slide here. All right, with that, let's, Patrick, if you want to talk about the human side more.
Sure. And I'd like to start by talking about some of the insurance data that exists already. And I know that I've met some folks here who are deeply familiar with the workers' compensation claims data environment. But it's a pretty special case in the insurance industry that a success story that for over 100 years, In the United States, we've been collecting very detailed information about the safety of workplaces, down to the individual accidents that each of us may have suffered. It is highly structured, going back to the days when a lot of this was written down on paper. But essentially, it's kind of like a credit bureau system, in that every employer in America has a rating that describes the safety of their workplace and that takes into account their geographical distribution, the types of jobs that exist at those workplaces. And they get a score. 1 if you're average, 1.5 if you're really bad at it, and 0.5 if you're good. And that's a spectrum. And so this insurance claims data, it produced a ton of structured information around the demographics, the accident narrative. There's a taxonomy around the type of accident. And then there's the claim status. It often takes many years, sometimes decades, to resolve these claims. And also professional estimates of the ultimate settlement cost to the insurer or the employer. And there's an army of people who are working to reduce these claims, not only for the financial reasons, but also to get folks back to work and to become more productive and healthier. In the case of our pilot client, they're extraordinarily interested in the safety culture. The management team used to be up on those polls before they became CEO and CFO, and a multi-billion-dollar company. And this is something that they owe to their workers, recognizing that many of them do not have a long runway of training before they're thrown into these hazardous situations. And so the unstructured data is where a lot of this sentiment comes out. We have an understanding of the feelings of the injured party. We understand their social, financial, family situations in these notes. We have an understanding not just of a list of the medical care they received, but their medical pathway, how they got here, their legal pathway if they've engaged a lawyer. And a lot of this can be structured, and a lot of it really benefits from an AI getting vibes off the data and being able to tell us a different story, both to give us a structured data, but also to engage in the informal interrogation of the data that's required by our legal system, our regulatory system, by the governance at the companies, their doctors, etc. And as Jason pointed out earlier, this unstructured data is tens of thousands of pages at this company, in addition to the wealth of structured data.
Right. So there are a number of interesting aspects to this particular project. Each claim can easily be over 50 pages, and it can contain a tremendous number of attorney notes and medical notes as well. And these claims are put together into notebooks, and these notebooks can oftentimes be over 1,000 pages. So all of these circumstances created a unique challenge to solve, which happily we did. And it also goes with some of the interesting sides on the insights beyond, again, profit and savings, and identifying trends where procedures can be changed to potentially prevent accidents from occurring. Data is the fuel of AI. I think many of us heard that statement before. And what AI can do, where a small team previously with spreadsheets couldn't, they could focus perhaps maybe on 10 types of trends they're looking for, is AI can look through all of this structured and unstructured data and go through all those layers of abstraction and come up with, hey, you were focusing on these 10 areas. Hey, I'm AI. I can come up with 1,000. And it can identify trends in data that they may not have ever even thought to ask. And it can into other details, such as which group of workers were able to go back to work faster, what physician were they seeing, what type of physical therapy were they engaged in, what type of medication were they prescribed. There's a lot of value in data, and AI can unlock those abstract connections, which it's very hard for us humans to do because it's about resources, time, and money. AI can look at all this data very quickly and in ways that we haven't really thought of. So on the architecture of the solution, because we are running a little short on time, I want to identify Pablo Piovano, if you want to stand up. Nope, up. So Pablo is our director of AI, and he would be very happy to talk to you about the technical architecture during the break or the networking or cocktails hour. And he particularly would like questions around the custom orchestrator they built, which is a very interesting technical topic, and also how they managed to deal with these 1,000-plus PDFs. So that's Pablo. Please see him during the networking and cocktail hours, and he'll give you some more details on the architecture itself.
And Jason, I have a very layman understanding of this concept of the orchestrator, but I've been throwing it around the boardroom recently back at work. So the idea, the way I explain it, Pablo, correct me, is that we're querying an LLM, but we actually have a second LLM that stands in front of it that says, is this a good question to ask the LLM, or should I direct it towards this SQL database elsewhere? And so that extra layer of, I think, is an engineering ingenuity that even I can share with my colleagues.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And it's that conversation of the large language models and then the small language models, which is very, very important.
You lost me again. Let's stick with orchestrator.
All right, so that's probably enough of PowerPoint time. We'd love to show you a demonstration. Now, we do want to preface this with the data that you will see is anonymized. So a lot of the very interesting insights we cannot show you, but we have Patrick selected some samples that he's authorized to show with the anonymized data.
Yeah, and we'll go through this quickly. There's three aspects to the tool as I understand it, and the first one is a chat interface, not unlike one we saw earlier in the day, I think, with SBA possibly, that allows for a natural language question. And there's sort of three use cases that I illustrate here. The first is we're insurance brokers. We take this client to London, and they meet with all of their underwriters there who appreciate the chance to see them face to face and look the executives in an eye and ask them questions about their business operations. Having this chatbot in the room for them to ask questions, I think would be really valuable. In the case of our client, there's a big concern about wildfire risk. They've never started a wildfire, but they're in and around the woods all the time. And there have been companies that have been bankrupted over billion-dollar claims because they accidentally started a wildfire. Or in one important case, because a worker was smoking a cigarette. That's banned at this company. They're not allowed to smoke on the job. But what the London underwriter could do is say, hey, let me look at 10,000 of your claims and just see if anybody was smoking or drinking for that matter. And that's something that you can query this database for, going through all the tens of thousands of pages of document to see if they can find cigarettes, smoke, alcohol, beer, whatever. So I think that's one important use case. The second is external defense counsel is used by this company, and what they'll do is they'll turn over all of the file associated with an individual accident. But having the lawyer be able to query this database to also ask questions about other claims to see how they have settled, I think it really supercharges that job. And the third one is the demo that we're going to do now, which is around preventing claims in the future. The risk manager is interested in the types of claims and can kind of navigate in just a natural rabbit hole Googling way the answers to their questions. So he starts by saying, I'm concerned about shoulder injuries. This is something we're seeing. We're having difficulty bringing people back to work after shoulder injuries. And so I'll read it to you because I know the text, the font's a bit small. And it's he says, give me the oldest shoulder injury claims that are in this database. And you can see there's one with Mark Hancock. He tripped over, if you scroll a bit, what happened to him? He tripped over some debris and fell on his right shoulder. His foot got caught. And he fell. And so let's go a little bit further. We'll ask more about Mr. Hancock, his claim, to find out if he's using opioids. This is a common problem with musculoskeletal industries. These people are on a lot of painkillers, and sometimes, if we go to the next question, and sometimes that can lead to issues, not necessarily addictions, but issues where if you've ever had a dental work done, the afternoon TV lineup is really enticing when you're on the painkillers. So here I ask, is he returned to work yet, and is he on restricted duty? And the chatbot says, yeah, he's back to work. He's on light duty with restrictions, as of October 13th. The next question is, is he on opiates? He is on opiates, as it turns out. He's using Narcan. And then I'm interested in that. It's a pretty important piece of this, and it's by giving it context with other folks, it really makes it clear, rather than trying to digest, let's say, all 50 prescriptions he's had during the 2 years of his injuries. And so the chatbot then says, from memory, practiced this earlier. He's on Narcan. I say, is Narcan often prescribed to accidents that you've heard of here? And it says, I say, give me an example of one. And they give an example, and they say, actually, it was the same doctor who prescribed Hancock and this other fella. Now, this is a national company, so it's odd that one doctor would treat two different injured workers. He switched to Percocet and Belbuca. And the end game of this, when I tried this without looking too hard for it, was that I looked to see if these people lived in the same town. And that might give me an indication that there's a local doctor who's kind of specializing in dealing with this company's workplace injuries, which isn't something that we've arranged or should happen naturally, and is a little bit of a red flag in terms of fraud fighting. And in this line of business, there's a lot of soft fraud, somewhere between outright fraud and just kind of like bad incentives that keep people from returning to the workplace and closing out their claim. So I think if we go to the details tab to see the second aspect of the tool.
Sure, and one item I want to point out, with each of the responses, it provides the references, which I think you saw in the previous demos, but it will take you right to a particular PDF that was used in answering that information.
Yeah, that is a bank shot victory from this tool. This is practically a document management tool. If you look at the other ways that people are doing this. I'm sorry, Pablo? Thank you. You've got the thumbs up and thumbs down to give the LLM feedback about the answers. So the second aspect of this is a tool that goes into the full set of data for an individual accident. If we click on details, and we can choose a claimant by claim number, and click on that. We'll get a little bit of a summary here, and so there's a few things going on here. One, they've taken the claims file information. If you click on all, Jason, and you'll see that it allows us to dig in on a few different areas: legal, nurse notes, etc. But what they've also done is create some structure from the unstructured data. Mm-hmm. So there's some key fields that we're interested in. We want to know what type of claim it is, who the insurance company is, etc. And there's a lot of stuff we're interested in that we could create more structured data with. We use that in the next step. But by essentially creating by structuring these claims, we can create time series that looks at the whole corpus of our full claims database and finds out things that have changed this month, this year, from the prior year. And we can perform statistical tests that allow us to, in two ways. One, look at the time series, see if anything's changed, and if that didn't happen randomly. And then two, we can also create similarities between claims. So in the same way that we look at baseball players and we compare them to retired players over the course of their career, we look at a guy after 2 years and make that comparison. We can do that similarly with claims. This claim's been open 6 months. Maybe in the past we used machine learning to just look at it's a shoulder injury, it's open 6 months, he's on physical therapy, and try to find similars. But now we can go a lot deeper, and we can look into these things, these softer things like what is his family situation, what's his social status, do you think he's been displeased with the way we've been adjudicating this claim? Is that the vibe you've gotten from the notes? And by weighting those properly, we can find here are the 10 most similar claims, and a lawyer or a claims adjuster can react to that and get a feel for the full distribution of comparable claims rather than just an expected ultimate settlement cost. If we go to the third page, we think back to our original request from the client, which is he wanted to have some impact, a win, with his management. And this company's management is especially concerned with safety culture. So what we've developed, and the formatting isn't where we want it to be yet, we're 8 weeks into it, right? Kind of a newsletter that comes out every month. And there's 3 elements to this. The first on the right is the police blotter. These are workers behaving badly. And this giving 4 names per month of folks who weren't following the rules is an idea where they can kind of they can get a feel for the current safety culture and what's going on there. The one in the bottom left is data trends, new words that we've seen recently. So drive cam and Toyota, they might mean something to a manager, they might not, but we're seeing more drive cam and Toyota recently than we had in the past. I'll give an example for a different client that we plan to deploy this with later. They are a grocer, and starting in 2020, they had the word Instacart in a bunch of their claims. We didn't know what it was, but as it turned out was they started in 2020 having a parking space for the Instacart delivery guy, and the sign was an absolute menace and was cutting open people's tires and making old women fall. And they had 100 separate incidents to do with Instacart signs in 2020 to present and none prior. And so that was an example of something that we probably wouldn't have found in their thousands of claims had we not been able to use this kind of statistical test. The last 2 are the news stories here. These are things that the AI can calculate for us, and they're just kind of generic ideas to raise the issue with management of things to keep an eye on. Here, I don't think there was a big difference in the percentage of liability claims related to speeding drivers or reckless drivers, but that's kind of like the topic of the month. Next month there'll be a new newsletter, and people can engage with and benefit from this tool even if they're not using it on a daily basis. And I think that's the third and final piece, and I'm getting the hook as well. So maybe stop and see if we have time for a question.
Right, so we actually do have about 5 minutes for questions.
Yeah, 10,000s of pages of documents, yeah.
How do you keep the integrity of that document, that case, from bleeding into another one with the AI?
So that's a good question. And there is technology out there that's been deployed by vendor firms that allows for individual claims analysis. And we see that actually as the feature of this rather than the bug. When I said, give me the earliest shoulder injuries in the chat, it would give me a different answer if I had 1 claim or 1,000 claims in the database. And we think that is the real differentiator here that helps us to give context to people who've only been looking at claims one at a time, professionals, claims adjusters, and lawyers, for managers who are trying to reduce future claims by saying, what's the vibe of all the claims here? Rather than just the one, what are the trends of them? And so it's kind of like a problem that we see as a little bit of a differentiating solution. Can we turn that off for some use cases? I'm not 100% sure about that. But for now, we think that it adds a little bit to the experience.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Hi, have you been able to build any automation into the tool for fraud detection?
So we're only 8 weeks into it, but we see a big area of development in creating what we're calling a tagging database, which is we're taking structured data, and we've got a couple dozen fields we added, but I want to tag everything for the word Instacart, for example. I want to have a little bit of a loop that says Toyota, and we put Toyota on there. Not sure what it's for right now, but this will allow us to do these automated statistical tests. The second one that isn't yet automated, but I think is pretty easy to pull off, is the mixture of the machine learning, the predictive stuff with the gen stuff, which allows us for these similar cases. We have known cases of fraud, And now, by creating this additional structure in the data, we've got a better way to create, minimal statistical difference between two data points than we had in the past. And that technology has been deployed in the past with the very well-structured data that exists, and we're hoping to supercharge it here.
And I'll add an additional data point to that. So one thing that this solution has a very interesting life cycle ahead of it, because once you start solving certain problems and getting certain answers and new insights, that actually leads you to the next generation of questions and insights that you could potentially go after.
And that's a great business model for Oz as well.
Right. And back to your comment on fraud, one thing you can identify is, let's say, through Eric Siegel's presentation earlier, you can create ranking systems of 0 to 100, is this fraud? And then the next column can be, how much do I have to spend to recover? Is it going to, for every dollar I spend, am I only going to be able to recover a dollar? Or is it going to be, for every dollar I spend, I can recover $5? You create these thresholds because there's not an unlimited number of resources. You have to choose, wisely what cases you go after. So a lot of interesting areas ahead.
Yeah, and one other idea that I'm really excited about is adding additional clients. In the same way that we're saying what happens with one claim bleeds to the other. We'd love it if we can be assured that there's anonymity in the data, that we could actually bring 2 clients and create some kind of scale. I think that really makes this a lot more valuable to us someday. Get 100 clients on here.
Right, and that's an entire other summit called AI compliance.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys very much. Thank you.